How can two nations with same historical roots become sworn enemies? These nations have 150 miles of electric fences, 2 million landmines, and thousands of opposing soldiers on each side. This is the demilitarized zone, dividing North and South Korea. This zone extends from the Han River in the west to the North Korean town of Kosong in the east, and has, for 73 years, been dividing the land that was once united. But the question is, why? To find the answers, you need to dig up Korea's history. For centuries, it was like an introvert not really mingling with the international crowd. But when the 20th century rolled in, things took a turn due to foreign interference in the Korean Peninsula. This was the beginning of the end for United Korea. Korea became entangled in the crossfires of the Russo-Japanese War. Even though the war ended in 1905, things weren't looking good for the Koreans. Because Japan had its eyes on the Korean Peninsula. In 1910, Korea underwent a formal annexation by Japan, becoming a colony under Japanese rule. This lasted for many decades, during which Japan wreaked havoc on the once peaceful land. Japan tried its best to suppress Korean history, language, and culture, but the Koreans fought hard. However, their rebellions weren't strong enough and Korea remained under Japanese control. The Koreans underwent years of torture. This torture continued during the World War II, where thousands of Koreans were forced to fight in the war for the Japanese. However, they lost. You might be thinking that this was the end for Korea's misery. But it wasn't. Enter the US. And the Soviet Union. Imagine you're trying to help a friend organize their messy room. You both want the room to look nice and tidy. But instead of discussing where to put things or asking your friend for input, you take out a marker and randomly draw a line across the room, dividing it into two halves. Your friend looks at you like you've lost your marbles. Well, that's pretty much what happened in Korea after World War II. The US and the Soviet Union wanted to help the region get back on its feet and kick Japanese forces out. But instead of having a thoughtful chat about how to do it, they got a bit artsy with a map. Two American Army officers sat down in 1945 and drew a line right through Korea. They probably thought they were being clever, but that line ended up being a big deal. The sad part is that Koreans never got a say in whether their country would be split or where this line would be. The United States and the Soviet Union said they would eventually hold elections to choose a single leader for all of Korea. But as the Cold War began, they couldn't agree on what kind of government Korea should have, a democracy like the US or a communist state like the Soviet Union. In North Korea, the Soviets enforced communism. In 1948, South Korea elected Syngman Rhee as its president, and in the north, Kim Il-sung became the leader. Both sides claimed to represent all of Korea, and in 1950, they went to war. On June 25, 1950, North Korean forces attacked the South, starting the Korean War. It was a very deadly war, with almost 4 million people dying on both sides. The war stopped in 1953 with a truce, but there was never an official peace treaty. So, technically, North and South Korea are still at war. They agreed to move their military forces away from the dividing line, leaving a big area in between. This area became the demilitarized zone, which is heavily guarded. In the middle, there's a place called the Truce Village, where leaders from North and South Korea can meet. The DMZ is one of the most guarded borders in the world. It's very hard to cross, but some North Koreans try to escape to South Korea through it. Many have died trying. People trying to cross have led to violent fights at the border. In the 1960s, there was so much fighting that it was called the Second Korean War, even though it wasn't a full-scale war. For a long time, North and South Korea didn't get along. But in 2018, there was some hope. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un met with South Korean President Moon Jae-in at the DMZ. They even had a summit on the South Korean side. This was the first time a North Korean leader had been in South Korea since the ceasefire in 1953. On November 1, 2018, significant measures were taken to promote peace and reduce hostilities in the Korean Peninsula. Buffer zones were established along the Demilitarized Zone, DMZ, spanning across land, sea, and air. These buffer zones were put in place to facilitate the cessation of hostile activities in these areas. The land-based buffer zones extended from the northern region of Deokjeek Island to the southern area of Cho Island in the West Sea. Additionally, in the east, Yellow Sea, the buffer zone stretched from the north of Sokcho City to the south of Tongkang County. To complement these land and sea buffer zones, no-fly zones were also established. These no-fly zones restricted airspace over specific areas, further contributing to the efforts to maintain peace and stability in the region. These initiatives aim to reduce tensions and promote dialogue between North and South Korea, emphasizing the importance of maintaining peace along the Korean Peninsula and fostering an environment conducive to diplomatic discussions and cooperation. Nevertheless, today, North and South Korea stand worlds apart. While South Korea thrives with the joy of BTS concerts and technological advancements, North Korea remains entangled in a bleak reality with limited freedoms and the oppressive rule of Kim Jong-un. But Kim Jong-un's journey to becoming the dictator he is today was far from straightforward. In fact, his parents fled to Manchuria to escape Japanese rule during his childhood. So how did Kim Jong-un, once escaping oppression himself, end up as the poster child for oppression? Stay tuned for the next part to unravel his journey to becoming one of the most feared dictators in the world. That's all for today, and I'll see you in the next video.